Right. Animation. Cave paintings were the first form of animation that started back over 40,000 years ago. It was thought before, it was around 30,000 years ago where they thought, cave paintings first arose. But I came across an article yesterday where they found that it went even further back than they originally thought, going back as far as primitive times. Cave paintings would be considered the first form of animation in terms of motion. There was pictures they found in Indonesia of buffalo and animals being speared by hundreds of the day. Other known primitive types of animation techniques, they used mud and rock and limestone, and they crushed it down in coloured types of rocks, and with animal fat and water to make a sort of a paste. And with your Dulux today, it could be considered quite a nice paint in terms of it's lasted thousands of years. After primitive cave paintings came along, the Egyptians, there was a bowl from Peruvia with a goat on it, and it was spun in a motion, and it skipped over. And there was also hieroglyphics, which were a form of art back in 30,000 BC. And this was taught as the Dynasty period. Basically, Egyptians used art to ward off intruders breaking into the pyramids. The first known artistic work of art was the Book of the Dead, featured in a famous movie, The Mummy, in '99. And then there was also the Peruvian Leonardo in 1500. After that, there came the magic lantern. I didn't quite find the origin of where the magic lantern came from, but I'd assume that people back then were quite scared of this projecting images of characters and such. How the magic lantern worked, it projected an image with light. Often used were oil and gas. This was the first type of projection ever. It was 1650 when it first came about. Then came 1826, the triantope, which was your most basic form of animation, which was on a string, piece of cardboard, weaved through. On one side was a bird, and on the other side was a cage. And when you twisted the string, it was an optical illusion, which looked like the bird was in the cage. Aside from the point in Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, he featured as a main character in the film, but that was based in 1899. But as we know now, it wasn't until 1826 that it was actually invented. Just thought I'd just throw that in there. Then came the Phenakistoscope. A hard name to pronounce, I found. A lot of syllables there, as you can see. This came around in 1831. It was had images on a disc, and basically you'd spin the thing and you'd look through the slits through a mirror, and you could basically make out a moving character in motion. Then came the zoetrope in 1834. The zoetrope is probably the best form of early Victorian animation, probably the best known. Basically, it was like a little salad bowl that you stuck pictures in, and like the Phenakistoscope, you look through a slit, and there was characters moving in it. The next one was the flip book. Flip book has been popularized by famous films such as Hot Fuzz. And flip book used was you basically get a little flip book and you put loads of pictures in it, motion, a little man running or whatever. Pretty simple. Then came the raxinoscope, 1877, which was basically the most advanced form of projection before along came the silent era. And this was used with transparent images, like celluloid, which I'll get onto later. And it was projected through a mirror prism and through a lens. The two forms of animation I chose were stop motion animation and celluloid lens. I picked stop motion, quite an interesting concept. The likes of Nick Parker with Wrong Trousers with Wallace and Gromit, and a personal favourite of mine, Robot Chicken. So the way stop motion animation works is it's usually 12 to 24 frames set, and basically it's to physically manipulate an object. Basically, you take an object, you put it down, and you will take a picture on your camera, and then you will do that about 1,000,000 times, and then you've got stop motion animation. And this is probably one of the most, it's a quite simple concept in itself, stop motion. And it goes back probably about 100 years. I've got a snippet of a video from YouTube. Take a quick look at.
Is an animation stop motion, sometimes called stop frame, is an animation technique that's existed for over 100 years. Filmmakers realized early on that they could create amazing illusions by stopping and starting their cameras. Objects, clay, puppets, and even people can be animated. The principles are always the same. Place something in front of a camera and take a picture. Move it slightly and take another picture. Do this a bunch more times. When you string these images together, the object appears to move. Typically, 12 frames create 1 second of stop motion animation. By varying the amount you change the object between frames, you can make it appear to move slower or faster. This is the most basic principle of animation. Puppets are a little more complicated.
That's pretty much your basic type of stop motion. The likes of Tim Burton with Nightmare Before Christmas used stop motion. Basically, when it comes to movement, they have hundreds of facial expressions which they'll change between takes to make the movement of the face while it's talking. Another form of Robot Chicken created by Seth Rogen and not Seth Rogen, sorry, Seth Green and Matthew Steinreich. Basically, it's a pop culture based comedy series. Basically, they focus on things like movies, films, TV shows, superheroes, video games, even like Metal Gear Solid. Basically, they use the whole stop motion process. They like to do skits like Star Wars characters, superheroes and that kind of thing. And I'll get on to cell animation. Cell animation is a different concept. It's basically like rotoscoping. You get the tube, and basically it is you get sheets of plastic, like celluloid, and it's traced over, again, like stop motion, hundreds and thousands of times. Celluloid, basically characters, they are, drawn on paper, a lot of times, like, the flip book or whatever. And then they're changed over, and they basically do the same process for hundreds of sheets of plastic, and they trace over that, and then they'll paint over that, and that's basically, your cell animation. And for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they used over 250,000 slides to create Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I've got a snippet, another snippet.
Just how was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs created? And how were the paint night and day to complete this unique experiment? After much trial and error, several hundred rough drawings illustrating the high points of each story are completed. Let's follow the story into conference, where Walt Disney and his hard-boiled directors look it over. Not a picture, long or short, goes into production without Walt's personal okay. Next, a director whips the script and dialogue into final form. Then he calls in his assistants, including his musical composer, and plans the score of the picture, timing out each scene carefully. He even acts out every move of the action, so that the men who work with him can visualize what the scene will look like on the screen. Now he sets his expert animators to work, the skilled artists who draw every movement in complete detail, just as now the picture moves into its final stage, color. In the studio paint laboratory, all colors used are made up from secret formulas. Expert chemists develop more than 1,500 different shades of color for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The 8 celluloids next go to the painting department, where more pretty girls apply the final colors on the back. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs require 250,000 celluloids painted like this one. In another department of the big Disney studio, artists delicately paint the beautiful stage set.
That's pretty much your celluloid process there with Walt Disney. Walt Disney created the first celluloids. He also, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first talkie, so to speak. They used celluloid animation to create the first animated movie ever. Disney Studios, Walt Disney co-founded the place in 1923. He didn't get it off the ground, properly till 1937 with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Walt Disney's biggest influences were the likes of Winsor McCay. He actually he made the first comic strip ever, which heavily influenced Walt Disney to create Mickey Mouse and then the Disney Empire as it is today. And Well, Winsor McKay, he wrote, in 1905, he wrote the first, or drew, I should say, the first comic book strip, Little Nemo in Slumberland in 1905. And that was the first comic book strip of the day. And Disney, can be, accountable for many films, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, and that's it.
Thank